Los Angeles, California. With 13 million people and over 1,000 emergencies a day, it's often referred to as the local news capital of the world. Video journalists have captured an unbelievable catalog of events.
To see what our members had to endure is very difficult.
This is almost like a movie. It's hard to believe that this was real life.
With our first on-scene heroes' perspectives, this is an insight into their most thrilling moments. In this episode, frozen in time, brave rescuers risk everything.
The ice that you're on can give way at any time.
They want to get her out of that water as soon as possible.
A fiery story suddenly becomes too hot to handle.
So we're up at the fire line filming this thing, and then the wind shifts.
And wild bears take over an entire town.
All the bears were just getting into anything that they could find.
In the affluent neighborhood of Mount Olympus, there are reports of gunshots during a possible home invasion. This is an all too familiar story.
Heard a shots fired call come out of Mount Olympus. I was 2 minutes away.
You don't really know who is behind those doors when you show up to that house.
When the rich and famous are targeted, things can go wrong very quickly.
So this is a huge story in Los Angeles. This was a home invasion or a robbery gone wrong in a house in a very wealthy neighborhood. Then you have an actual celebrity, a well-known rapper, who was shot.
The subject was identified as an American rapper, Pop Smoke.
It's very often that this is happening, that rappers are being shot or killed in LA.
Now, earlier in the day, Pop Smoke and a friend had been sitting in a white Range Rover in the front of the house there. They were holding up stacks and stacks of cash and putting it on Instagram for selfies. They didn't realize it, but in one of the pictures, it showed the actual address of where they were.
I get it. Everybody wants to be on social media. We all want to put our lives out there and show the world what we're doing, but it can be very dangerous, and this is a perfect example of what happened here.
So that very night, 4 men entered the residence with guns and robbed them. Unfortunately, an altercation with Pop Smoke occurred inside the house and he was shot.
First responders enter the house to assist the injured rapper.
This is as serious as it gets.
So inside the home is where they'll do a full patient assessment, determine what's happened, determine how many times they've been shot, are they breathing, is their heart pumping, and start that CPR, start doing a bag valve mask. It's difficult to perform that in some areas as you're going down steps and watching your footing, you're doing the best you can. Getting into the ambulance, you're able to really get back into that significant CPR.
In situations where the fire department can see any kind of signs of life, they're always going to transport that person and perform life-saving measures.
They were performing life-saving measures on this young man. And he actually died in the hospital.
Another young rapper killed before his time over a robbery gone wrong.
In situations involving high-profile people, it usually draws immediate frenzy.
So shootings in Los Angeles, they usually make the news, but when it becomes a public figure, a celebrity involved, such as Pop Smoke, this story doesn't become just a local story, it becomes an international story.
Just east near San Bernardino, firefighters are responding to a 2-vehicle crash on the freeway, with one car engulfed in flames.
This clip highlights why I really don't like filming anything on freeways. It is extremely dangerous.
Crashes are pretty common, and sometimes they result in a big fire.
I've been to many situations like this with cars ablaze. Your first instinct or your first thought is that somebody's inside and you're going to need to do a physical rescue.
Vehicle fires pose many different hazards, obviously for the firefighters, but also for the public.
These first responders are amazing. I mean, they're the first ones on the scene trying to save lives while putting their lives at risk.
This situation is already dangerous enough, but something else catches the camera operator's eye on the other side of the highway.
It starts with great visuals. You've got a car upside down, car on fire, firefighters coming in and putting it out. But on the other side of the freeway, the cameraman starts to hear screeching. He pans around. There's an SUV driving sideways up the freeway. Rubbernecking is what we call it.
While trying to get a glimpse of the emergency on the other side of the highway, the driver puts many other lives at risk.
This particular person became engaged in watching the fire and lost control of his vehicle. Thankfully, he was able to save it and not cause another collision on the other side of the roadway.
It's a prime example. You have a distracted driver looking at a car fire on the other side of the freeway. If they're looking at that, not looking in front of them, what's going to happen? I mean, in this case, they were really lucky they didn't crash.
Thankfully, the firefighters were able to control the blaze quickly, with no further incidents on the road and no fatalities. Coming up.
One moment you're safe, the next, running for your life.
But first,
This is a dangerous rescue.
Is she breathing? Is she underwater?
over 150,000 accidents occur in the U.S. per year due to icy road conditions. If not properly prepared with special equipment for grip and traction, one wrong move is all it takes for a driver to find themselves at the mercy of nature's unforgiving power.
Weather conditions are different all over the U.S., and this wasn't like it was in Los Angeles. This actually was in Michigan.
It's an icy cold day in Monroe County, Michigan, and one woman has fallen victim to the treacherous conditions. Her car has broken through the ice and plunged into the freezing water below.
A woman has driven down a road, not realizing that it was water covered in ice.
And as that vehicle drove through and they thought they're on a level, normal ground, the cookie crumbled. It fell. They were trapped.
This is so dangerous. The temperatures, being submerged in that really cold water for a very long time.
First responders came on scene and were sliding on the ice with full braces for their safety.
They're rushing. They want to get out there and get her out of that water as soon as possible.
This is a dangerous rescue. The ice that you're on can give way at any time, and now you're having to break a window and to pull an individual out to safety.
These first responders are trained heavily in these areas where there's snow and ice involved.
The first responder smashing out the window of that car, his first thoughts have to be, is she breathing? Is she underwater?
It's unknown how long that person was stuck in those harsh environments, so they certainly could have been experiencing hypothermia.
Luckily, first responders were able to take her to safety very quick.
This is a huge reminder that you have to stay cautious and be constantly watching the roads when you're driving in severe weather.
Luckily, the woman is transported to hospital suffering only minor injuries. Inland, From the Santa Barbara coastline, a colossal inferno has ignited in the sprawling Los Padres National Forest, forcing thousands from their homes.
What you see here is a common brush fire in the Los Angeles area. They're often increasing in severity and duration as our wildfire season continues to grow longer. When you have a wind-driven fire, it's like a freight train that pushes through the area.
Wildfires are an extremely dangerous situation. They can change direction in an instant. At one moment you're safe, the next you're in harm's way, running for your life.
We have to hit fires like this hard and fast. We want to try to ideally keep these down to 10 acres or less. Otherwise they could blow up and go all the way to the ocean. But the aircraft are key to make those precise water drops.
It's just after midnight, and the wildfire is burning out of control. Video journalist Howard arrives on scene.
This is a fire, it's burning for a few days already. I mean, it's gained the attention of every photographer in Southern California. So we're up at the fire line filming this thing, and then the wind shifts. And now the fire is on top of us.
I honestly thought I was gonna burn the plastics around my lights on my car. That's how close it was.
The firefighter's job is being made unnecessarily difficult by a huge media frenzy, with many people and their vehicles creating a traffic jam.
We have large apparatus that needs to get in and out, hose that sometimes has to go across the roadway. And so when we get vehicles, whether they're from the news or they're people trying to evacuate, but they're coming into this choke point, it really can create a problem for us.
The one thing you don't want to have happen to you when you're at a raging wildfire like this is you don't want to be trapped. And when there are so many people blocking your only way out, what do you do?
Coming up.
The fire department were fuming with the amount of photographers.
They were really putting themselves in a really dangerous situation.
It's in the middle of the night, and an out-of-control brush fire is fast approaching a residential area north of Santa Barbara.
When you have a wind-driven fire, it's like a freight train that pushes through the area.
They can change direction in an instant. At one moment you're safe, the next you're in harm's way, running for your life.
There were probably well over 1,000 firefighters that were there to combat this fire.
Fire crews are desperately attempting to battle the blazing inferno, but curious onlookers and a huge swarm of media crews are recklessly restricting their access.
There were so many photographers on the scene of this one fire, and there was nowhere to go. The fire department were fuming with the amount of photographers getting in the way.
When there are that many cars parked along the roads and you can't get out and emergency vehicles cannot get out and everybody's trapped, this is very dangerous. This is really scary.
In that one shot, you can see all those vehicles in the way. 90% of those are not fire department vehicles. There's news vehicles, there's press cars, there's civilian cars, there's SUVs. I mean, that really is as close as you can get to a fire without being burned. They are up on that fire line.
As more and more people try to catch a glimpse of the fire, some civilians brazenly decide to fake media credentials to gain access to the area, putting themselves and others in serious danger.
On some occasions, the police come in contact with subjects who claim to be media but actually aren't. It's very difficult in a fluid situation for an officer to determine who is who. So typically, they'll just let you in. And your life is in your own hands at that point.
Anybody can make a press credential. Technically, anybody could flash a pass and say they're media, which is really scary.
I rarely see firefighters that angry and that aggressive, like, get out of the way now. Lives were in danger.
Thanks to the heroic actions of the fire crews, no one was seriously injured or killed. However, many homes are lost in the widespread devastation and destruction.
We had tens of thousands of acres that ended up getting burned. We did have structures, unfortunately, that were lost, but we were able to save hundreds of structures, and thankfully there were no civilian injuries or fatalities.
Los Alamitos, just southwest of Anaheim, officers have been called out to a standoff with a man on top of an elementary school.
What I see here is obviously someone who has some mental health issues, climbing up onto the roof of a school, completely naked.
It's 8:55 p.m., and luckily, school's out for the day, as this man is refusing to come down.
It's not every day you see someone on top of a school, let alone someone on top of a school with no clothes on.
But dealing with a naked suspect does have its upsides.
Whenever you roll up to a scene and the suspect's naked, I mean, immediately, look, you obviously know that this suspect isn't armed.
The threat to officers drastically goes down knowing that the suspect doesn't have any weapons.
Now, the objective of the police officers is to get the suspect down as safely as possible.
We'd want to have the fire department on standby just in case he chooses to jump off. We got to think ahead in these type of situations because you never know what this person's going to do.
A ladder is placed to help the man, and he starts crawling to get himself down.
At the conclusion of this situation, officers manage to talk the suspect off of the roof. He exits via a ladder provided by the fire department, and he's taken to a local hospital where he can be evaluated.
So this suspect's up on the school roof. He's got no clothes on. I'd imagine he saw the police dog they brought in, came to his senses, and he came down by himself.
After a 2-hour standoff, the man is safely placed in an ambulance and sent to hospital to get the help he needs. Coming up.
Guys, 400-pound bear over there.
But first,
This is a horrific crash.
Anything could happen. Anything could go wrong.
car crashes happen every day across the world. From minor fender benders to destroyed vehicles. But when you add high speeds to the mix, the result often becomes fatal.
When I arrived on scene, it looked horrific.
It's almost midnight in Inglewood, California, and first responders have been called out to a sickening car crash.
This is a horrific crash. It's beyond sad. I mean, this car looks absolutely mangled.
In this situation, one person was ejected and another person was trapped in the vehicle.
First responders must work quickly while still being aware of the dangers around them.
First responders are trying every way possible to access this vehicle. The car had hit a light pole at high speed. The light pole was crushed right across the roof of the car. There's live wires above them. Anything could happen. Anything could go wrong.
When they first come on scene, their first priority is to save a life. And they're going to go in there and try to extract the person from the vehicle.
First responders managed to save the trapped passenger, who was taken to hospital. The other victim, who was ejected from the car, also miraculously survived. Nestled among the Sierra Nevada mountains, South Lake Tahoe is usually home to around 22,000 people. But when a huge forest fire comes terrifyingly close to the resort town, everyone is forced to evacuate, transforming this popular tourist destination into a desolate ghost town, and leaving the town vulnerable to looters.
These things are very dangerous. I mean, that's why I chose to film from the safety of my car. These fire department trucks pull up, they're all hanging out, firefighters are sitting on the grass. I'm like, guys, 400-pound bear over there. They all run back to the fire truck. It was kind of amusing.
Although it was too close for comfort, the blaze is eventually contained, and the town's residents return to their homes to clean up the mess these unbearable guests have left in their wake.